Hi, this is Greg from Greg's Bass Shed. Welcome to the lesson. I'm going to dedicate this lesson to Francis Rocco Prestia from Tower of Power. So we're going to look at 5 of his classic bass lines. Like many great musicians, Rocco playing is very unique and it leaves you with no doubt as to who is playing the bass lines when you hear them. Rocco's style can be described as punchy, melodic, tight and aggressive, and he has a unique muting sound to his tone. He achieves this by playing with only 2 fingers on his fretting hand, and then he mutes with the 3rd and the 4th finger, so he mutes the strings with those fingers, and that gives him his unique sound. Now this is actually really hard to get down, and I've discovered that while making these bass lines, but it's great fun to try and also to play Rocco's different bass lines. So I've picked 5 of Rocco's classic bass lines, and these are some of my favourite of his bass lines. There's obviously lots and lots of Tower of Power have hit some of the ones that I haven't covered here, but these are the ones that I really like, and they showcase his groove and his excellent bass style. So if you're not familiar with Rocco or Tower of Power, I suggest that you check them out. They're such a great band. An album that I'd recommend to listen to is the very best of Tower of Power, the Warner Years. That's got all the hits on it, and it's a really good introduction to Tower of Power. I'm going to pick the main sections from all of these 5 bass lines and teach them to you. So I've put them all on a PDF. You've got a choice of standard notation or tab, and you can get that by clicking the link below this video in the description. And remember to subscribe to my channel. You can do this by pressing the red button below and click the notification bell as well. The first bass line we're going to look at is from Squib Cakes, and I really love this groove, and it especially sounds so funky with the baritone sax playing alongside the bass. This line is seriously punchy, and if you look on the PDF you can see the staccato dots above the notes, which mean to play them really short. You start on F, the 1st fret of the E string, and when you come to these 16th notes, which are at the end of the 1st bar, you've got a few positions that you can play them in. You can either use the open D, so that's E flat, D, C, D, or you can play it here, E flat with the 6th fret of the A string. And that's the position I prefer. It's a bit more shifting, you have to jump down, back down to the F, but with the open strings I just can't get that sounding tight, so the D tends to ring out, so I don't really like that position with the open string. So, and then you jump back down. But you try it and see which position you prefer out of both of those. So that main riff repeats 3 times, and we've got some little tags on the end of it. So if you look on the 1, 2, 3, the 4th bar, you've got that little run there. So you've got A, B flat, B natural, C. It's an interesting combination of notes there. You've got 2 A's, 2 B flats, B natural, C. So, okay, and then if we carry on, and then we've got, so that's an extra bit there. So it's a real jump there. You can do it. So like I said, if you're using the open D, it would be a bit easier, but it just doesn't sound as tight to me. So that bar there, which is bar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Then we have another bar of the riff, and then we change then. So we've got, so that's stepping down to E flat. So F, G, G flat, F, E flat. So we've got a load of E flats then. It's important you get this rhythm right. So those 2 bars there, the last bar of the 3rd line, we've got And the same for the bar afterwards. It's a bit of an unusual rhythm to play first of all. It's not sort of intuitive. So we've got so play that rhythm really slowly to get used to that before you put it into the riff. And then the second from last bar. Okay. So that section there, those last 4 bars are kind of based around the E flat. So you can have your little finger on E flat, down to A flat, B flat, E, B flat, D flat, D, E, G, G flat. And play a really short note on the end there. Right at the end there, where we've got the organ fill before we go back to the start again, there's only a 2/4 bar there. So you've just got 2 beats to count. So that catches some people out. So you just finish your 1, 2, boom, boom, boom. So just 2 beats and then back in again with the riff. So that's the main groove. It obviously does change later on in the song, but you can listen to the song and try to get that bit down too. It's a really tricky riff to get right, to play really tight, and especially with that shift there from the E flat back down to the F. So try it really slowly at first, and then, like I said before, there's some kind of unusual rhythms in there, some really funky rhythms, so make sure you're playing those correctly as well. The next bass line we're going to look at is from Funk the Dumb Stuff. I've got to make sure I say that correctly. So this is a really great punchy groove with really clipped short notes. Out of the 5 bass lines in this lesson, I find this one the hardest to play accurately. You've really got to set the groove up and keep it flowing and playing it in time, and it is a little bit tricky to play. And I find that when you play these types of bass lines, you really get to experience just how amazing Rocco was, and how hard it is to really get close to his sound. Now I start this riff on F, the 3rd fret of the D string, and I play the 2 Fs, and then I shift with my first finger to C. So that's the 5th fret of the G string, and then you can play these next 5 notes. So C, A flat, E flat, G, and then shift back down to F. I'll play that really slowly. And then you've got to play it really short. And another thing that Rocco did, he played really aggressively, really hard with his right hand. So you get those really punchy, hard sounding notes. Now if we move on to the second bar, the first 6 or 7 notes are the same, and we've got that shift from F to C. 2 Gs, and then D. And what I do there, so I stay in position once I've moved. Stay in position here, and then D, G, F, F. So I'm playing both Fs with my first finger. So that's a really hard groove actually, to get those both really tight. And also to play it really with clipped notes and really muted. So have a little try at that. So that's the main groove for the song. Again, you can look at that on the PDF, and I have put that in tab as well. third bass line we're going to look at is from What Is Hip. Now this is probably Tower of Power's best known song, or one of them definitely. And if you look at the PDF, you can see that the bass line, we have a lot of E's just here. So the challenge for this is playing loads of those E's, those 16th notes, perfectly in time. And again, you've got to play it with this Rocco muting. So I'll just play it without the muting. So if you start with your first finger on the 7th fret of the A string, the E there, and then apply some muting, and you can just get a really muted note. And then take your finger, you basically use your 3 fingers here to get some muting. Put them down fully and then take them off slightly, and you can get the kind of tone that you want. And then play it really aggressively with your right hand. And if we look at those first 2 bars, you've got a high E there. So if you play with your first finger on the 7th fret of the A string, you've got that E there, that octave shape. You can play that note quite easily, and then you've got the open E as well. So and the challenge here is keeping that muting going through those 2 bars. And you play those 2 bars round and round and round for the intro. Now when you come to play the verse, you play those first 2 bars again, and then you change the pattern. Now when you change, I suggest it's definitely better to move to your 2nd finger for the E, because then you can play, if I play you that 3rd bar, so what I do is the bar before, when we have the open E towards the end of the bar, I then shift to my 2nd finger as soon as we come back with a fretted note. So that 2nd bar, open, and then 2nd finger, and then we're into the 3rd bar there. So that 3rd bar, 2nd finger on E, and then D on the G string with our 3rd finger, C sharp with our 1st finger, and then jump up here with your 2nd finger. And that pattern is from the 7th fret of the G string, same thing on the D string. Okay, so from the beginning of the 3rd bar, and then when I come to these last 8 16th notes, back with my 1st finger on E. Okay, so that 2nd line really slowly, 3, 4. And it also helps to count through these 16th notes. Just count 1, 2, 3, 4 in each bar. You're going to get really lost otherwise. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and when you come to the 3rd bar, if you accent or put emphasis on the 1st note of each beat, that helps you to kind of get the groove going. So So that's the intro and the verse, and obviously you've got the rest of the bass line to look at, but I just wanted to show you the main pattern here, and it's a real technique buster to maintain these 16th notes in time. It's really tricky to play at that speed. I used to play in a Tower of Power cover band, and that's one of my favourite bands to play in. We used to play loads, basically play all night, play Tower of Power all night, and it was a really tough gig, really demanding physically and mentally basically as well. And if you let these grooves slip slightly in time, then it just sounds really rubbish. So yeah, you have to be really on top of your game to play these bass lines, so don't worry if you're really struggling. It just shows really what a master Rocco was. By the way, if you want me to cover the whole bass line for any of these 5 bass lines, then leave a message below in the comments box. Just let me know which one you want me to cover. I'll look at the whole thing, and also just let me know how you get on with playing these, what you think of the lesson, and what you're struggling with, and how you're trying to kind of get to sound like Rocco as well. I'm really interested in your comments and how you get on with the lesson, so just leave a comment below the video and I'll get back to you. The 4th bass line we're going to look at is from Soul with a capital S, and this is another one of their real hits. We're going to look at the intro and the main riff. The rhythm in the intro is really interesting. You've got this kind of sax slides into hits, which are the root notes for us bass players, and then once you hear the first sax slide, you can use the drums to keep yourself in time. After the 4 bars of guitar in the intro, the bass piles in with a real high octane bass riff. So the muted notes are really important to get the kind of vibe of this bass riff. But make sure when you play the 2 high Cs, you play those really clearly, because that really stands out to me when you listen to the groove. Okay, so again, Rocco just used his first 2 fingers and he had some muting, so you'd start with your first finger on the D, and you've got kind of a muted open note. And to get the muted notes, if you don't know, you hold your finger really lightly on the string. So just try that, play a D, and then... And muted notes don't sound that great when you play them slowly, but when you play them within a bass line, they're really funky. So you've got... So D, muted note, D. So you've got D, muted note, D, and then you've got 3 muted notes. And you can use those muted notes to kind of shift to play that C. I play it with my second finger. So play that first bit. Okay. And it would be really interesting to kind of see visually where Rocco played these bass lines. So I'm assuming that he kind of played it here. But in some videos, there's not really any close-ups that I've seen, but you can see he plays quite a lot in this area of the bass as well. But ultimately, you got to kind of play it where it works for you. And you can vary where you play these muted notes, just to keep it funky as you go along. But you can use the muted notes. You could play the muted notes on any string really. So you've got B, C, C sharp, and then I just go back up to D with my first finger. Basically, whenever I have a D, I shift back up with my first finger. It's a lot of shifting, but you can get the muted note. You can get a nicer sound really. So there's a lot of shifting, but what I find when you're kind of trying to emulate certain bass players, and it's good to play the same style, the same kind of way they did if you want to sound close. Like for example, if you're playing James Jamerson stuff, he used a lot of open notes. He kind of used flat wound strings, so you couldn't really kind of tell the difference between the sound really between the open notes and the fretted notes as much as you can with round wounds. So for if you're playing some kind of Motown James Jamerson lines, then I would then incorporate a lot more open notes. I don't usually do this. So just experiment with that first riff, and then when it goes into the main song, Rocco just uses the second bar, the riff from the second bar. He just plays that round and round. And if you haven't played muted notes before, then just slow it right down. Remember, you hold your hand lightly, so you could just do the first pattern. This is from the last bar. could just try that first of all to try and get a good muted sound. And you'll notice I've just got my whole hand down. If I just had my if I just had my first finger down, you'd get a bit too much tone. The difference of that. So you're kind of thinking about keeping as many of your fingers down lightly over the fretboard as possible. The fifth and last bass line we're going to look at in this lesson is from Diggin on James Brown. I really like this tune. It's a really fun tune, and out of all the bass lines in this video, it's probably got the least muting, so it's kind of the most kind of full notes played in the bass line. When you're playing the intro, make sure that you're playing the correct articulation and that you're really following the phrasing of the sax players. And this means you focus on how long and short you're playing your notes. So the sax players would play the intro, ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. And where Rocco was so great, he really followed closely the way that the brass would play it. So really short note there. So so we just got 4 notes for that: C, B flat, G and F. Then the main groove starts and it's in C, so start with your first finger on the 3rd fret of the A string. And when you get to 2nd bar, make sure that you play the E on the 2nd beat of the bar and play a really short note. So 1, 2. It's a bit more unusual to have that first beat empty in a bass line and have a really strong note on the 2nd beat. It's more useful to have a kind of brass stab there or something. So make sure you count that properly. And then you repeat that again. And then when we move to F, I like to shift then, so I'm playing the C up here. And then you're in the right position. Okay, so you shift to C, which is the 10th fret of the D string. So from the 3rd line. And then shift, and then back down, and then same riff on C, and then we move to G. And be careful of that rhythm there on the bar of G, which is the last line. It's just not what you think it would be. Okay, so and then we've got the intro little riff again, and then back again to C. Okay, so I'll play the whole thing slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Three, 4. And then shift. Three, 4. Okay, so that's the main bulk of Diggin on James Brown, and that's the 5 Rocco classic bass lines. I hope you liked my selection and you enjoyed the lesson. If you did, can you please like and share this video? Also leave a comment below, and that really helps me to push the video up a little bit on YouTube, and so it can be shared around more. Remember also to subscribe. You can do that by pressing the red subscribe button at the bottom of this video and press the notification bell. You might also want to check out my website, which is gbshed.com. I've got more free bass videos, free bass resources, PDFs, transcriptions, and I've also got details of my video courses and my bass books. And you'll have a free giveaway on the home page. So that's gbshed.com. This is Greg from Greg's Bass Shed. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video very soon.